what ended up happening on this property, even though you bought it initially planning to move in, you moved in for a couple of months. Even your father-in-law moved into the basement, and then after a couple of months, you decided, you know what, Welland's a great place to invest in, but you kind of wanted to be closer to your family and kind of live in Toronto. Was that the full story, or was there?
Not actually, not entirely. So during those couple of months when we were doing the renovations, we got married.
Okay.
That was,
Yes.
and then both of us got new jobs.
Oh, okay.
And then there was so part of it was eventually I'm going to have to go back into the office. And there was this opportunity that the Toronto real estate market for rent was a lot lower than it would be typically.
True,
So that was an opportunity for us to find something below market value or below pre-COVID market value.
That's right.
But the real reason was because we felt like we weren't ready to commit to moving to Welland the full long term. And while living in Welland for this winter was a nice idea because you had so much space and it was very affordable, it just always felt temporary. And I didn't want to continue to feel like I was living in a temporary place for 3 months, 6 months. At that point, I had gone through so much change. I wanted to just add one more thing. Let's find a place, let's move. But at least we will have some stability moving into the spring. And now we're going to enjoy that.
True. And like we discussed, right? You always have the option of going back, right? If ever you decide you own this property. So if ever you decide you want to live in the upstairs, you have the option of telling the tenant that, hey, I'm planning on moving back in, and you can use the space if you need it, right? In the future, a couple of years later, if you need that extra space, it's an asset you own, right? So
absolutely. And when we have kids, it would be potentially a good idea because the schools, there were 3 really good schools in the neighborhood. It was a beautiful, beautiful neighborhood. And I could see it for those needs, but at the moment we don't have those needs and it just doesn't make sense.
True. We're talking about long-term planning at this point. But okay, so let's talk about the numbers here. So after you left the property, you were able to rent out the upstairs for $1,845 inclusive. You were able to rent out the basement for $1,345 inclusive. And let me tell you, this basement is, even though it had a kitchen, it had a bathroom, you did updates, it's actually a massive bachelor apartment. So it's 1,000 square feet basement apartment, but there's no bedrooms. It's entirely open space with a massive dining space, spacious kitchen, and just one big open living space. So when we were buying the property, we ran the numbers. We were being very conservative, right? We were I don't know what this can rent for because we've never rented 1,000 square foot bachelor apartments. I think we put, what is it, $1,000, maybe $1,100 as our estimate.
Yeah, exactly. My pessimistic actually was 900. Best case scenario, I was 1,100.
Yes.
It was great.
So we ran it with that, but then you ended up actually renting it for $1,345, which is amazing numbers, considering it doesn't have a bedroom. I'm sure they put some kind of curtain or barrier in the living space, right, to make a bedroom of some kind. Right?
But it looked really fresh. It looked really nice, and it has a lot of storage and a lot of natural light. It gave off the cool really new apartment vibes.
Yeah.
So, and we put a backsplash in the kitchen. A lot of nice stuff that just made it look a lot more modern and also comfortable.
Yeah. No, that's always important, right? That's we want to create apartments that end up appealing to the tenant that's looking for a nicer space. So almost like the condo quality. So whenever we're talking about renovations for these bungalows and basement apartments, even though it's a basement apartment, we don't want it to be the typical basement apartment that you imagine. Brampton, for some reason, is the perfect example where there's so many of these basement apartments that are just put together and kind of a handyman job or a do-it-yourself job that didn't go well. You have a tiny one window in the basement and that's it. We definitely don't want that.
We don't want people living in dungeons. You actually see that more often in Toronto. I've seen some of these really old houses. One of them, this guy made a duplex and he put the shower in the closet.
Oh
Like,
my
those like
God.
sliding like mirror closets. There's a
Yeah.
I'm like, how do
Oh my
how do
God.
you put a shower in someone's bedroom like that? Like, where is the steam gonna go?
Oh my God.
This is the worst idea I've ever seen.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
I was just shocked, and it sold for like more than $1 million.
Yeah, of course, of course. All
Yeah,
right. So you were able to get 1345 for the basement. Your total rent is 3190. And then your expense of 2471. Your cash flow
yeah,
on this property is actually $719, which is crazy good, especially considering that your mortgage payment is higher because you didn't put 20% down, right? So had you put 20% down, this would likely be over $1,000 a month, right? So
yeah,
you've done really well from the cash flow standpoint. Now, I do want to stress, when we say cash flow, it's not pure profit you get to take and spend on a vacation, because like you mentioned, there's plumbing expenses, there's the occasional expense that pops up, but every property has those expenses usually. It's just some properties have cash flow to pay for it versus others, if you're break even on your fixed expense, now you're paying out of pocket every time something goes wrong with the property, right? So this money is going to be part of it's going to be a profit, but definitely it's also your insurance to cover you from putting your own money into this property ongoing, right? Whenever there's a vacancy,
yeah,
whenever there's
yeah,
some
exactly.
expense that comes up. So
Yeah,
good
it's
stuff,
that
good stuff.
extra cushion.
Yeah,
We
100%.
we made a rule that we weren't going to touch it,
Mm. Yeah.
and I think that really helps. It's now money we don't have to worry about, right?
Mm. Yeah. What I found is it's it's tough to take money out of the property bank account. This is my experience. This may not be the same for everyone, but it's tough to take money out as pure profit in the first like couple of years. I think only
Mhm.
now we have two properties that were consistently taking some profits off the table, me and my brother. And there are two student rentals we bought like 6 years ago now, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And it's only because they're student rentals, so the cash flow is still a little bit higher, but we've also bought it quite a bit earlier. And just the cash flow numbers have got to the point where we've built up a reserve in the bank account that
Mhm.
anything comes up, there's funds saved. So now anything in excess of that, we're starting to take. But honestly, when I think more and more about it, to create true passive income from our real estate investments, it's something I'm trying to figure out, like how do we get there while owning assets that have expenses that come up, right? Have like plumbing leaks, have just regular
Yeah,
expenses. I don't know if this is the right answer, but in my mind, the only way I can see it happen easily, I don't know if this is easy, but like clearly, is if you buy a certain number of properties. So whatever your goal is, and then if it can build enough equity to the point where, say, you sell off half of them, take the profit and you pay off the mortgages of the other half. So is it 2, 4, 6, whatever the number of properties you have left over, free and clear without mortgages? At that point, then if you don't have a mortgage payment, your cash flow is like true profit, right? Because
yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's going to be significantly more than whatever
yeah.
expense
See,
typically.
now you're imagining like 30 years down the line.
Yeah, it's going
But
to
for
take time.
me, for the next 10 years,
Yeah.
every time, I personally see it as like every time that there's an opportunity for me to unlock more equity and
Mm,
do more,
yeah.
I'm going to stay at that 20%
Mm,
as long as I can for as many properties as I can.
absolutely.
Being the optimistic person, being like
Because you're
just
on the growth
realizing
side
that,
as well, right?
yeah, exactly. Like over time,
Yeah.
10 years down the line, you will always make more money if you own this asset in
Mm,
some capacity, right?
yeah.
So the first thing that I did after we closed this deal, after we did the construction, rented it out, was I got a line of credit. Because I have the plan of like using the money that we've saved up for any other investments, because it doesn't make sense to just put it in a checking account. Like, what is that doing for me?
Mm,
So while like in other investments in the stock market, which are, you can call them liquid, but I'm not going to cash out on my investment so I could repair something. So we got
yeah.
right. So we got that line of credit, and that's where I am creating more flexibility for me to be able
Mm,
to like maximize my returns without having to hold funds and like miss out on some opportunity for investment return.
mm.
but I'm a little bit more aggressive than most people, I would say.
Potentially, but I think it's also making the right decisions that suit where you are in the investing journey, right? This is your first investment property and you've now built some profit. You now is not the time for you, I don't think, to look at, oh, okay, how do I pay this property off so that I have one free and clear property? Because it's going to take you a long time and then you have the one property, right? So now is definitely that time. Okay, let's take what you've learned in terms of implementing these strategies, doing the renovations, knowing where you want to invest, unlocking some of the equity to be able to scale it up. There is
Mhm.
a tipping point at some point where getting more properties doesn't necessarily get you closer to your goal at a later stage, where
Mhm.
at that point potentially having more free cash flow gives you some flexibility in your life, not necessarily in your investing, right? Because you're right,
Mhm. Mhm.
selling properties and having a smaller portfolio long term will always result in you having less of a net worth, right? Because you don't
Yeah.
have more assets to grow. But there is a tipping point where, like, for example, if you have a portfolio of, call it 10 properties,
Yeah.
getting the 11th property, maybe it helps you, but I don't know if it moves the needle per se. You already have a sizable real estate portfolio, right?
Yeah.
However, if you can get to the point where now that 10 properties can pay you an income, maybe you want to pursue starting your own business, right? And let go of the secure job you may have. Having that income may give you the opportunity to take a bit more risk, right? Or
Yeah.
maybe you want to take a bit more time. I have a few clients now where their spouse wants to stop working so that she can stay home with their new child, and that's like a priority for them and that's what they want. So now,
Absolutely. That's the meaning of life.
yeah.
To be able to spend your time with the people that you love. We're not meant to be working for the rest
Yeah.
of our lives.
Exactly.
One thing that I wanted to say though is while you were talking about having 10 properties, and I was thinking about like, oh yeah, then maybe you want to move into something that may be a little bit more lucrative, like, you know, becoming a developer or starting your own business. I think I have to catch myself because this is such a fallacy. It's like you're doing something great here. You're
Yeah.
building wealth passively. Just get another property. Just why try to take money from something that's really working well and stuff it into something that's going to stress you out? I think that 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 this is the key,
Yeah, it's
personally. I'm not there yet though, so I
yeah,
can't say for sure.
100%. Now I've seen I've seen many people, not many, because it's only a few people that ever get to that point, honestly speaking, right? Getting to 10 properties is not an easy accomplishment by any means, especially without sort of joint venturing and partnering up with a whole bunch of
Yeah,
people, like trying to do it yourself. I've only seen a few people able to do that.
yeah,
You can decide to grow more. You can decide to sort of buy maybe commercial buildings, right? Multifamily. There's other opportunities, but you are absolutely right. You you want to be careful about only hunting opportunities without looking at, does that opportunity get me closer to the life I want? Not
yeah,
necessarily the rewards the opportunity has, but like, does that fit the life I'm trying to create, right?
yeah,
Because I'm sure for both of us, right, in our work, there are always opportunities to make more money at some sacrifice. Maybe you have to travel all around the world to work harder to do something more, and then you don't get to spend time with your wife, right? You don't get to stay home,
yeah,
be with
yeah,
your family. So there's always this balance of, let's assess the opportunity not only by how much profit it may make us in the short term or long term, but also, does it allow us to live the life we want? Because ultimately,
yeah,
that is the purpose of making more money, right?
yeah,
The
yeah,
money itself doesn't, I don't know, it to me it doesn't do anything more than give me the options and flexibility to live the life I want, have the security that I can take care of my family, that I I have some means.
yeah.
But beyond that, it's that tipping point where working harder, working more, like
I can share a perspective that I have that probably not a lot of people have, or maybe they do, they just don't talk about it. But my perspective is that at some point, making more money doesn't really give you much more, right? So what is the point? What is the point of working? And the way that I answer that is like the answer to the question that everybody has for, if you had all the money in the world, what would you be doing with your life? The truth is, we're going to go to the beach for like a couple of years, and then we're probably going to get tired of it and do something else. And I think that something else changes for me. And when it comes to making the decision of, hey, I built this enough wealth that I can retire right now for the rest of my life, am I going to go and become an operator of a business that is just strictly for money? Most likely not. I'm either going to do it because it's fun,
yeah,
or because it makes a very big difference about something that I'm super passionate about and I want to make an impact in the world.
yeah.
And those are the only reasons where it's no longer about the money. I'm doing this for other reasons. Because if it was about the money, I just keep doing what I was doing that got me here in the first place. That's how I see it, at least. There's a certain point where, when money is not an a consideration anymore, where you're motivated by these other things, and it's either like the financial freedom and that quality of life, or the legacy you want to leave behind. And it's a luxury to be able to say that, though. And that's the luxury that we hope to be able to afford at the end of this journey.
Yeah, no, that's a very good perspective, and it's something that's not talked about often, right? Because you are right. I think I think Warren Buffett said this. Well, it's like,
yeah, him and I have a lot in common.
I think there was one quote. No, it was really similar, actually. It's like, it's never a good idea to marry someone for their money, right? It's never a good idea in general.
Okay.
And it's especially not a good idea to do that when you're already rich, right?
Okay.
So
What context was he talking about? This
the
guy usually
context,
gives investment advice, not marriage advice.
so his context was, so for him, when he buys a business, he's
Okay.
getting almost into a long-term marriage with this business, because he's now the owner for the long term. So
Yes.
it was in the context, he never buys a business if he doesn't like the management. If they're just people that make his stomach churn,
Oh,
he doesn't want
I
to get
see.
into business with them, right? Just because, again, it's like,
I see.
he wouldn't do that just to make more money, and he would especially not do that if he's already rich, right? It doesn't make sense
Exactly.
to take
Yeah.
that on. So in the same context, like starting a business
And
to
that makes
make
so much more sense as investment advice.
oh boy.